Well, and the good news is I liked Andre's presentation so much, and all you have to do for mine is change the fonts and the pictures, and it's the same story exactly. So it should go quick. But I thought it might be interesting to start with, hey, what's the Microsoft guy doing here? Right? Those of you who are presidential or vice presidential campaign fans might remember Admiral Stockdale. Why am I here? I'm here for several reasons, but I would tell you quickly, so I feel like Microsoft, maybe 5 years ago, kind of lost our way in identity. We took a lot of really smart identity people and spread them all over the country and out around the company, and poor Kim Cameron, basically for 3 or 4 years, was a very lonely soul in the company. And about 3 years ago, we realized the mistake here and started bringing all of those resources back together again in what today we call our Identity and Security Services division. And so we're ready. Hey, we want to come join the party. So that's why I'm here. We're excited to come join the party. And I thought I'd tell you a little bit about it. So most of these things you probably know. But just as a refresher, so 90% of companies in the world are using Active Directory somehow on premise to protect their identities and their applications and resources. The Microsoft account system might be one you're less familiar with, but that's also another property that we run in the Identity and Security Services division. We have about 500 million active users of Microsoft accounts, and they authenticate about 10 billion times a day. Part of that is because the Exchange Active Sync protocol is just a nightmare. But hey, they authenticate a lot. We have about 5.5 million organizations that today use Microsoft Azure Active Directory in the cloud as a way to extend their on-premise directory or as a cloud-only directory for accessing things like Office 365, but increasingly for accessing other services as well. Like we have a lot of customers who use it to access Salesforce.com and Concur and Workday and things like that as well. And we have over 1,000 engineers now in the Identity and Security Services division working on how we advance these technologies and really help our customers be ready for a world of cloud and devices and how to thrive in that world. And even with all these things to bring to bear, we're a little worried. And we're here to partner with all of you because I think, as Andre was saying, some of the challenges in the industry are bigger than any one of us, certainly bigger than we can do by ourselves. And we'd really like to encourage and invite more collaboration. We love the collaboration that happens already, but we'd love to see more because the bad guys are out there. Right? If you saw this episode this weekend, it was horrifying. And I think that unfortunately, a lot of us have spent a lot of time kind of warring over our individual kingdoms, and the real threat is the bad guys coming. And I want to talk some about that and what I would love to see all of us do together. But first, let's just start with, hey, remember when, and this is very similar to Andre, so we can just change the fonts and the pictures here. Gosh, remember back when it was so simple, you could just log into your PC with your username and password? It was awesome. And then, we made things a little bit more complicated because you needed to connect to file servers. And then we had these awesome directory servers that took care of that. And I could log in once across my whole enterprise. And for a very short time there, right, it was nice and tidy and things just worked and I could get onto anything. And you put up a firewall and you felt pretty good. Right? Like, hey, this isn't so bad. And yeah, maybe you used, hey, if you were really advanced, you used a federation server and you connected to a couple things over the internet. That was great. But it didn't last very long. Another thing, of course, I want to point out, and back then, attacks were really kind of cute, right? It was things like, send money to somebody in Nigeria, or click on this link in Instant Messenger, right? And the attacks were kind of cute, and while they caused problems, they were like kids. They were hackers. It wasn't an industry. It was for fun. But then things started to change. The first real thing I think that started to change is the rise of the consumer cloud. And just a lot of really interesting, great work here by people like Facebook and Google and Pinterest and Skype to really start building these really compelling cloud services. And actually some really nice consumer identity work around this as well. And now you've got kind of the rise of the commercial cloud. I would say over the last 2-3 years, this has been the next set of big news, right? The rise of things like, Salesforce far earlier than the rest of us, in fact, but Salesforce and Azure and Office 365 and Amazon Web Services, and really bringing the benefits of the cloud to companies and organizations in a way that they can get those benefits and never could before. And now all of a sudden the cloud matters a lot more to us, right? And hey, by the way, we still have our little cool on-premise shell kind of, and a bunch of us are working on these nice services that let you connect your on-premise shell out to the internet and take advantage of things like the commercial cloud in a way that's safer and things like that. And this is, I think it's very exciting, right? But it has made the cloud worth a lot more, right? Because now I use the cloud for everything. I use the cloud to store my kids' photos, and I use the cloud to pay my credit cards, and I use the cloud to update my insurance information, and I use the cloud for all of my business-critical documents. It's like the cloud all of a sudden is really valuable. It's really, really valuable, and wow, that means that it's really, really fun for attack, right? It's really under attack all the time. In fact, at Microsoft every day, we defend the Microsoft account system from about 95 million different attacks. Right? Let's just let that sink in, right? We have 500 million accounts that are active. 95 million of those are under attack every single day. Okay? And all these different ways, these things are under attack. And if you think that that's because we're in the cloud and now the cloud things get attacked, unfortunately that's wrong. On-premise things get attacked just as much, and I think in some cases we just don't realize it. In fact, in some cases, on-premise things get attacked a lot more. So these are some stats that I think are kind of sobering. So the average attack for an on-premise system happens, when it happens, it goes over 200 days before it gets detected, right? And this is a very different way. Hackers don't get into your systems anymore, or very rarely, by sending a piece of malware that someone double-clicks on, right? That is not what they're doing. They're usually doing some kind of phishing attack. In fact, if you follow the news, right, an awful lot of the recent sets of attacks, the notable ones, are things where someone managed to get a hold of a set of corporate credentials and then do some kind of sideways elevation through the company until they could finally take over a highly privileged account and then wreak real havoc. And that really is, that's the 75% number I have down here of attacks these days are done through some kind of compromised credential, right? That's the cool way for a hacker to get into a company now. And our estimate is that right now it's the potential here, if it really bent badly, is more than $500 billion a year to the global economy. And we know that already it costs somewhere in the range of $3.5 to $4 million per breach for companies of all sizes. And these guys are just getting better and better and better at this, right? In fact, I think Andre's chart, while scary, with them going like this and us going like that, is very accurate. So we got to figure out a way how we're going to bend the curve. Because these guys are industrialized, right? Like, it's not script kiddies anymore, right? These guys have an entire industry. In fact, they have a supply chain. Like, there are people who make just SDKs. And they sell them to people who then run services and sell applications. And if you want to rent a botnet, you can go rent a botnet for a while. If you need a VPN connection that you can use to attack somebody, you can get those online. It's not hard. Like, there's an entire industry around this. The screenshot on the left here is one of my favorites. This is a tool you can buy online. You can buy it for less than $100 a year. It comes with free updates for the whole year. You get automatic updates and phone support. You got a problem, you can call in, and this is a password cracker. So what it does is you give it, you buy a set of, from a different agent, you buy a set of usernames, and then you pump in a whole bunch of likely passwords, and it just goes off and checks for you, and it comes back and tells you all kinds of things like which ones are good, which ones are locked, which ones are not locked. And in fact, you can see it's not just for attacking things like Hotmail, it's also great for attacking anybody who's got their email exposed over their firewall, right? So up in this corner up here, you can see it can go look at your SMTP servers. It can do all kinds of variations on usernames. Like, it's a really pretty sophisticated tool. And this is just one of many, many, many tools like it. So let me tell you about one attack that happened to one of our customers, a relatively high net worth individual. He got targeted. And the root target was they looked up his phone number and figured out who his phone company was. So they figured out where his landline was. And then they social engineered the help desk, the support desk, at the company that was giving him his landline. It took 25 calls. But basically, they would call, and they would talk for a little while, try to convince somebody, and just when the person on the support line got a little suspicious, they'd hang up, right? Or, oh, I got to go take care of the kids. And then they'd call back later with now they have a support ticket number even. And then over time, managed to just get enough information that they could finally convince somebody they really were him, right? And unfortunately, the support person then gave out his username and password, okay? Now you've got some nice keys to the kingdom. Then the hacker could log into their internet site and essentially take over the, you could think of it as the switchboard, right? But now they can get to all of his email because that account had an email with it. They could reroute calls, right? So then all of a sudden they took over his home phone number and rerouted it to their phone, right? And they've really got a nice trust route here to attack out from. And from there, they then went after us. They went after my friend Eric's system as well, and they went after AT&T, right? Because he had rooted all of the trust for these, all of his password reset things, and AT&T's system of calling your home to verify that you really are, right? All went back to this home phone number, right? And so AT&T, the hacker called AT&T, and AT&T said, well, we're not sure we trust you. We're going to call you back on your home line. So they called back on the home line, and the hacker picked up and went, hey, it's me, and they let him go. Right? So after they had taken control of all these things, they sat and just collected data for a good 3 months. Right? So he didn't know he'd been compromised. They just collected data for a good 3 months. And unfortunately, this guy was very organized. In his Hotmail account, he had all of his bank accounts laid out in a folder structure with all of the mails he'd gotten from all those accounts and who the account owners were. It was really bad. And so they just sat and collected all kinds of information until they were ready to attack. And then in a single day went after everything. Right? He didn't know he was under attack until he tried to log into his Hotmail account and found out that he couldn't log in. They had changed the password to lock him out while they went through and executed on this attack. They did a lot of damage. Right? Took out lots of loans in his name, spent money on his credit cards, directed deposits out of his bank accounts, moved stuff all over. And even after a year of working to recover this, right, and with lots of insurance and help and all those kinds of things, because pretty much every financial transaction has some kind of insurance, he was still out $37,000 out of his pocket, right? And so it kind of shows you in this case the 1 weak link, and I think this goes to Andre's point earlier, the 1 weak link was the social engineering on the support desk at the company that gave him his landline. And that then opened up this potential to get out across all of these other systems and raise havoc. So what are we going to do about this? Well, I think as an industry, we have a lot of really great responses going on now. I like a lot of the things we're doing. Obviously, over time, we've done all kinds of things to harden people's credentials. We've got smart cards and oath codes and authenticator apps, and we're starting to do interesting things with biometrics. A lot of us are investing in our own internal attack teams, right? And teams that are essentially trying to break in and break us before the bad guys can break us. And we have teams that go out and watch the dark web and collect information about what attackers are doing so that we know ahead of time what to watch for. We've got shared intelligence between some companies now where we actually call each other up or send each other information about what's going on so that we know what to look out for. And things like bounties where we'll pay you, like Microsoft has a lot of programs where we'll pay you to tell us about a problem before you use it. The piece I'm probably the most excited about is in the area of advanced detection, right? I mean, obviously there's things like rule-based detection and static analysis, but I think big data here gives us this unbelievable ability, and we're finding very fruitful types of work here where by using big data and by essentially doing what we think of as anomalous pattern detection, right? Where you build up a series of objects that represent the user and their device and all the things that they use, you can do really interesting, not look for problems, but look for things that are unusual, right? And that's a very promising area. In fact, just a week ago, we turned on a new algorithm that we're pretty sure cut our fraud rate by about 20% in 1 week, just by using this kind of algorithmic approach. Now, of course, the bad guys will work on that, and they'll find some way around it, and a year from now, we'll need another way around it, right? But there's a lot of really interesting work going on here, and I'm thrilled with the work the industry is doing in this area around advanced detection. And then finally, dynamic mitigation, which I think Andre called dynamic authentication or something like that. I think it's another one. We just all have to get really good at this. And you're seeing more and more of this, and I love it. Like real-time risk scoring, device profiling, like is that really the device that that user usually comes from? Adaptive authentication methods, conditional access, and policy-based access. I think these are all really good things, and I'm proud of the work we do here. And I certainly appreciate the collaborations we've had with people in the room to really advance these capabilities. But then, if you look forward into a world of the future, you think about a world of the Internet of Things and things becoming more and more connected. It's just not enough, right? So in a world where all of my identities and all of the places I store information and do business and all the things I have are connected, right? It's not just my telephone, it's not just my smartphone and my PC and my tablet. It's the light bulbs, and it's my fridge. In fact, a bunch of interesting stuff. Did you know that there are 4 billion light posts in the world? Right. And within 10 years, all 4 billion of those light posts around the world will have a smart light bulb in them, a light bulb that can report back on all kinds of things. They'll essentially be ambient sensors. Right? Hey, that's really cool, right? Think of the amazing things we'll do with 4 billion light posts all reporting back ambient data. But think of the havoc I could cause if I could take over even a small portion of those light bulbs and put entire cities in the dark all of a sudden, right? Could get really bad. And then today, for instance, I don't know how many of you follow closely, but Wired magazine or Wired.com has a article today. A hacker just announced that he has found a way to, over the network, connect to drug dispensing machines in hospitals, you know, the ones that go into your IV, right? And administer a deadly dose of whatever the drug is. All remote, all without having to walk into the patient's room. Right? So if you think about the kind of havoc that the bad guys can wreak in that world where we're connecting all of these things together, it gets really scary. And that's what kind of gets me back to the reminder, right? If the story I told you about losing $37,000 seems bad, right? The future is much, much scarier. And it really means that all of us have to get together and instead of defending our castle, kind of defend humankind. Right. So I have 6 points here, and this is mostly an invitation for collaboration and discussion and working together. But the first one is just oh my gosh, we still have so much work to do just to get all of the federation standards in all the right places. And yes, the next time you see a startup with a smartphone app that doesn't support the right federation standard, you should just walk away. Right? And you should make sure that all your RFPs, when they go out, require SAML or OpenID Connect or something that gets us out of this world of everybody having to have a really good username and password storage. Because that stuff is hard and scary to do. Right? You don't want to trust just anyone with this. So there's lots of work to do here. And unfortunately, while it seems like it's getting better for web applications, for smartphone applications, it is generally not good and not improving dramatically yet. So we really have to continue our work there. I think the next big one is just eliminating passwords altogether. Like, how do we get to a world where we have hardware-bound proof, you know, and a good certificate that shows I am who I said I am, and it can't wander between devices? So I'm really happy with the work that's happening in the FIDO group here. We're excited to bring FIDO support into Windows 10. I think that's going to be a big win for the industry. But again, it's an invitation. It's not just FIDO work. It's work for all of us to say, hey, how do we get better and better at not having users have to know their passwords? Because right now, that is the biggest form of attack, is just credential phishing. We got to get rid of it. We need a whole set of standards for IoTs. The reason that drug dispensing machine for hospitals can get hacked is because it has no sense of identity. In fact, you don't even have to log in. You can remotely just reconfigure it. In fact, you can flash the BIOS remotely without ever having to prove even who you are. And that's because there just are no good standards here. Now, there's a really great new working group, the ACE working group, and the IETF has just gotten started. If you're interested, I'd encourage you to get engaged with that group. But I think this is an area where we're behind and the attackers are ahead, and we better move really, really fast to get a great set of standards in place for the Internet of Things. Another one I think we just don't spend enough time on is making sure that as new technologies come to market, we educate people about how to use them and what they mean the same way. So this is another area I think we need to use the same language, we need to use the same metaphors, and make sure that we're helping people not have to relearn. You know, when you get into an automobile, you always know that an automatic at least, right? You know it's got park and neutral and reverse and drive, and thank goodness for that, because boy, I don't know the rental car industry would really work without it. We need to get to that point in this industry as well. There's lots of interesting opportunities here for sharing intelligence to help defend our co-customers, right? And there's some interesting work already happening. The OpenID Foundation has a new working group on this. We're going to be participating in that heavily. I would encourage all of you to participate as well. Or if there's some other ways you want to share intelligence about attacks and about compromised user accounts, we'd love to talk about those things as well. We're very open to that. And then finally, and shocking for Microsoft, oh my God, we think it's bad enough that we're also open to sharing IP too. Right, so we already have a few instances like this. Like we have some really nice IP that we've shared with the whole industry around how to check for child porn and cut down the instance of child porn dramatically. I know that Facebook has done some really great work that they've shared out on some fraud stuff. I think we just need to do more and more of that as an industry, where we realize that this piece of intellectual property is so important that we're willing to turn it over for the good of humankind versus the bad guys. And I'd encourage everybody to think broadly about the success of the entire industry rather than the success of our individual kingdoms. And that's kind of my spiel. And I'll just close with this, because I really do believe that without great security, all of this cool work we do around digital identity, it ain't worth the electrons it's written on. Right? So.